Sonic games come and go. Some live long in the memory of fans for the right reasons, some for the wrong reasons, and then some simply fade into obscurity. Today, I want to talk about one of my favourite Sonic games as a child, and one that I don't really hear talked about much. Let me take you back to 2003. The Game Boy Advance was in its prime. I mean, the system was about 2 years into its lifespan, and we already had Advance Wars 1 and 2, the Golden Sun games, Metroid Fusion, Fire Emblem. The gaming space was currently going through a period where the concept of handhelds and handheld gaming in general seemed to propose an incredibly important opportunity, and Sega were not blind to it, releasing Sonic Advance 1 and 2 on the system with a third on the way. But we're not here to talk about Sonic Advance 3, we're talking about a little game called Sonic Battle. Released between Sonic Advance 2 and 3, there's little to no information on the game's development phase, or why Sega decided to make another Sonic fighting game, only this time make it GBA exclusive, but they did it. I wouldn't go on to play it for a few years, being that I still couldn't eat solid foods, let alone use the L button to block, but when I did, little me adored it. To this day, I look back on this game with so much love. And yeah, it might be through the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia, the game was not perfect, but it felt like home. What initially drew me to Battle over the other Sonic games around when I was little were the designs. I'd already played my first Sonic game, Sonic Heroes, and when I would go to Blockbuster or wherever it was I was getting my games at the time, I remember looking at the covers of all the Sonic games and finding the art style of Battle so striking. In fact, for my money, this is the best Sonic and his friends have ever looked. The bold, striking art of Sonic and Shadow on the cover was rougher around the edges and so much cooler to my little 4-year-old brain than the more rounded, fluffy art of the covers of the other Advance games. If you've seen my last video, you'll know how much Shadow means to me, so seeing him look as cool as this genuinely feels like a canon event. When I finally got the game, I realised it wasn't just the art on the cover that I loved so much, but the art style within the game itself too. The sprites are phenomenal. The animations make each character's unique moveset feel so satisfying to explore. When the game first came out, there were mixed opinions on the combination of using 2D sprites and 3D fighting arenas, but I think outside of some of the frustrating side effects, like losing view of an entire fight because you're stood behind a wall, it gives the game a really unique look that, at least when I was 4, was a visual treat. The story was another great standout. The concept of a Merle, being able to fully customize his moveset as he lives and learns amongst Sonic and friends. It was a genuinely fun concept, and then the spoiler alert, but the reveal that actually this has been Eggman's plan all along, being forced to battle a Merle to the death as Sonic, or in other words, being forced to destroy the robot you raised and nurtured to this point, was insane. My 4-year-old brain blew up. It felt like I was playing Anakin vs. Obi-Wan on steroids.
I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you.
I should have known the Jedi were plotting to take over.
Anakin, Chancellor Palpatine is evil.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Well, then you are lost.
The characters were so vivid too. They felt directly plucked from the adventure games, and their dialogue is a real highlight. Like I said, however, the game wasn't perfect. There weren't enough buttons on the GBA to make the combat system layered enough to make skill important, and because of this, some characters were just inherently worse than others, which caused huge and incredibly inconsistent difficulty spikes throughout the campaign because some characters just simply weren't equipped for the fights you had to use them in. I remember being stuck fighting Knuckles at the end of Sonic's episode of the story with an incredibly low level of Merle for so long. Sometimes fights in Sonic Battle felt great and well balanced, other times they felt nigh on impossible and incredibly punishing. I think these difficulty spikes were honestly just an attempt at dragging the game out, because that's the other big problem. The game was repetitive. Like, Heroes level repetitive. Okay, maybe not that bad, but still. Most of the campaign forces you to fight the same fights twice over, and an insane amount of them at that. Trying to play through the story in this game feels like trying to walk in a straight line through tall grass in a Pokemon game. And this, when combined with the punishing and inconsistent difficulty swings, it makes an otherwise entertaining story an incredibly grueling slog of one. Still, I wasn't lying when I said I look back on it fondly. For all it was intensely difficult and punishing for me, especially being that young, it taught me the type of resolve that I like to believe allowed me to go on and enjoy other punishing games like my favourite video game of all time, Elden Ring.
I dreamt for so long. flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted. Corpse after corpse left in my wake. As I awaited his return. Heed my words. I am Melania, Blade of Mikola.
Who's to say that without having to fight 3 guard robots as Knuckles about 500 times that I would have even reached, let alone defeated Millennia? Seriously, I credit this game a lot. I used to quit easy. I was 4. I'd get too frustrated. I couldn't even play Pokemon when I was that little because I just refused to comprehend the type advantage system, and I'd end up getting my butt kicked. Not this game though. This was a Sonic game, so I stuck through it. All for the love of that speedy blue hedgehog and the one he calls Faker. And if I hadn't, I might still quit easy, and I might still, at my big age, not understand type advantages in a Pokemon game. While I loved it, the game's reception was mixed. The positive end of mixed, but mixed nonetheless. While critics did praise the graphics, most couldn't see past basic gameplay issues that come as a result of the game existing on the GBA system, such as the limited movesets of the characters. There simply weren't enough buttons. Somehow, IGN gave it an 8 out of 10, they must have woken up on the wrong side of their usual Sonic despising bed or something, even going so far as to call it one of the top original fighters on the Game Boy Advance system. I don't know how well the game sold, I can't really find any solid figures on the internet, but according to some random person posting on the Sonic Retro forums on Christmas Day in 2003, it sold only 8,120 copies in its first week, and didn't even make the top 25 of the Japanese console charts. Obviously take those figures with a huge pinch of salt, but based on Sega never making a sequel and not really acknowledging Sonic Battle too much since, I'm inclined to agree that it didn't sell well. Sega and a lot of the general gaming public seem to forget that Sonic Battle ever existed, which is why, for all intents and purposes, it was the forgotten Sonic game. That was, until recently. In the lead up to the release of SonicXShadowGenerations, Sega released a trilogy of short animation episodes about Shadow the Hedgehog. Dark Beginnings was a truly wonderful love letter to Shadow and Shadow fans, so I recommend you check it out. It's entirely available on the Sonic the Hedgehog YouTube channel for free. It only costs you 14 minutes of your time. I wasn't expecting anything to do with Sonic Battle going in, but in the first episode we got to see Shadow fighting a Merle. Just seeing him again, in such cool context too, made my inner child so happy. It might be naive of me to say, especially given the original game's reception issues, but I'm hoping that seeing him again means this forgotten Sonic game won't remain forgotten for much longer. Thank you so much for watching this video. I love Sonic the Hedgehog and I love Sonic Battle, despite all of its obvious problems. If you liked this video, please check out my last video, titled Shadow the Hedgehog and Autism. I'm really proud of it. If you're new here, don't be afraid to say hi. I'd love to know your opinions on Sonic Battle and which Sonic game you think has been forgotten over time.